Go.
All right. Hey, everyone. Here it is, another episode show, recorded Zoom. Not really sure what to call it. This is Reconnecting Inward, Conversations in Courage. I'm one of the hosts of this platform. My name is Jim Gardner, for those of you that don't know. And I am a coach with Leap Zone Strategies, where we work on personal and business brand development, strategizing, and positioning out into the world. So I am fortunate enough to be joined by one of my dear colleagues, actually, and peers. She's an amazing person. She is a space holder for transformation. She is a coach. She is a retreat facilitator. She's going to talk all about that. But she's also a former healthcare worker, and is going to bring some unique perspective into self-compassion and how that relates to courage in today's landscape. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dori Howard. Hey, Dori, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Welcome.
Yeah.
All right. So before we jump in, why don't you take a few minutes and just kind of give us a little bit about who you are, and I know you have this amazing retreat facility on Salt Spring Island. So share that with the viewers, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, which is, right now is not a bad place to isolate, I got to tell you. I kind of prepared for this moment. So thanks. I am a former nurse. I worked in pediatric oncology for many years, which is kids with cancer. And while it was a very rewarding profession, it was also very demanding and very grueling. But at the end of the day, it was an amazing place to be. And I went into mostly leadership development, and then got my coaching certification, and now I have this place on Salt Spring Island. And when I got it, wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't really know. It was kind of I went through a series of what I would call unplanned transitions, which kind of gives you a real kick to figure out what to do next. So that's actually when I probably summed most of my courage, was at that time when I didn't know what I was going to do, and visioned this place, which you've seen, this retreat center. And so now what I do, so I started my career in healthcare and in healing. I'm a healer, really. And I figure I've come full circle, because now, as a space holder for transformation, the healing that I do is more around, definitely a holistic healing kind of focus. And it's more on what I would call upstream healthcare. So instead of taking care of people when they're sick and down, it's around people who are ready for a shift or a change in their own lives as a result of going through maybe a series of unplanned transitions. And unplanned can be anything from experience of death or divorce, or loss of job, or all three, and then some, or planned transitions where you've chosen to maybe shift a career and not realizing what it is that you need to do differently. So it's really looking at how to sort of build in a complete package, I would say, in terms of health and healing and wellness.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word transition, and obviously I think what a state of transition we're in now, on the macro and the micro level, right? As a collective, as a human condition, and of course, each of us individually, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's huge.
Before we dive in a little bit to some of that, so with your retreat center, so Salt Spring is an island off of Vancouver Island, and I know, I just want to mention, because I have been to the facility, and it's absolutely stunning. Can you just describe a little bit about it? I know, it's got the tree house and things like that. So give us a kind of an overview, because we'll make sure that people have the links, and we can direct them to check this out for sure.
Yes, because someday we will be able to gather again. I know.
We will.
Yes, I am 100% convinced of that. Although when this all happened and started coming, everybody was probably having the same feeling. What am I doing now? And here I've built this place to be this place of gathering and place of healing, where people physically gather, and they will, and we will gather again. And this will be a place, probably even more so now, for people to recover and recharge and heal. So Salt Spring is kind of known for its it is a healing place. There's a different energy about Salt Spring Island, and I don't want to be too woo woo about it. But has a different energy here. It's very much, the pace is slower. It's expansive. So there's lots of space in between our properties. And the property that I have is this oceanfront. You probably can't see it from the background, it's a bit too light, but it
Yeah.
is oceanfront paradise. And when I first got it, of course the land looked the same, but the house needed a bit of TLC, and basically rolled up my sleeves and started, and transformed it into a place. I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted some kind of a place for healing. And I wanted that kind of Zen meets West Coast design feel or elements. And so, yeah, got to work and started doing that, and created the space where I have the house and I have a tree. I built a tree. Well, I didn't physically build it, but designed it on a
Hmm.
napkin. Your contractor do it. Please do it. Please help me with this. And created this tree house. Had this barn up top of the studio that was empty. Used to be a grow up back in the day. Made it into my yoga studio, as you've seen. And so really started to think about what kind of space I wanted to have where people could come here to feel nourished and nurtured and cared for, and a place where they could recharge and relax and rejuvenate and heal to their own transformation, whatever that may look like.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's quite a property, I mean, it is. Yeah,
yeah,
the windows are blown out behind you, but it's right there on the ocean, and there's an outdoor bath facility too, right? You created like an outdoor bath, and
yeah.
it's
Mhm.
cool. And you do have plans to build some more tree houses too, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
That may have gone by it'll be a bit delayed, but
Yeah.
the plan is to ultimately build four. So I have a second one in the I would say in the planning stages for sure, but I do have plans to build four. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, we'll get back there for sure, and it'll happen. It'll
Yeah.
happen because the dust will settle for
Yes.
sure. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's dive in. What I'd like to discuss is, I know, with your background in healthcare, and because of that, you have quite a lot of people that are in that field, you colleagues, friends, and so forth, uh, and people like us coaches, this is the time where leaders need to lead, and their respective communities, as I've been saying on this show, and specifically, this is the time where self-compassion uh, needs to be a priority, right? And because you went through this firsthand in terms of, back in that day when you were in the healthcare, right? You were give, and you never came home to kind of right that balance, that equilibrium, and that's when things started to kind of implode for you, right?
Several times. Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It wasn't something I learned until quite recently in terms of what it looked like to really practice self-care and self-compassion, because in my mind and in my, well, and you're kind of conditioned as a nurse in healthcare that you are there to give to others, and that's what you are. You're in service of others for sure, but it doesn't mean to be at expense of yourself. And it was at the expense of myself, my family, and
Mhm.
that's not, then that leads to ill health, which I definitely experienced. So, mhm.
Yeah, and so obviously now, I mean, the stakes are very high with healthcare workers, and people are giving this essential service, people that are out there on the front line, people that maybe not be on the front line like us, and yet, we are giving more. People, people are in need of service, and this is the time for contribution. So, what could self care look like now? Because I feel very passionate about this, and I've mentioned this. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to the human condition. We are given the gift of time now. What do we do with that time when people that are listening to this, they want to practice, or they want to take a step forward in the right direction? So let's bring some of your kind of instinct on that discussion.
Yeah. So self-care for people who aren't in the front line, or self-care for people who
Well,
are in the front line?
well, let's talk first. Let's talk people that are in the front line.
Right. Okay.
right? What would that look like based on, I know you've never dealt with a pandemic, let's say, I don't think you have when you were a nurse, but you had your own kind of, front line.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, haven't dealt with a pandemic, but certainly was in the hospital when HIV first came on the scene, and kind of that was interesting because it was the same thing that was there was scary, it was unknown, there was fear, all that wasn't nearly as obviously like this, and then the same thing with SARS, again not the same thing, but you're dealing with things that are like kind of scary and unknown. You don't know what to do, and
Hmm.
no one knows what to do, and so this is very different. And at the same time, the same things emerge. And I've been in several situations where you're working day and night and day and night, and you get called in the next day, and then you go in. And so, while I haven't been in a pandemic, I do know what it's like to be working a ton for the service of the greater good. So for me, for what I would recommend, or what I would say for people who are on the front lines, and there's lots of people who are on the front lines in other ways right now that are working
Right.
in the grocery stores and that kind of stuff, is to bring that awareness of how well tired and exhausted you may be, but still ensure that you're getting taking a little bit of time or a little bit of awareness to making sure you're eating properly, drinking water. I mean, the go-to thing is to come home with a glass of wine, because that's what you do. It's like, oh, I just need a glass of wine, and that's not a bad thing, but also to make sure that you're eating healthy, eating just eating,
Mm.
just having something to eat, and then getting out and having some fresh air, and all those things that, taking some time to breathe. It doesn't take, people think meditation takes an hour, 2 hours or long. You could do a little meditation in the
Mm.
time it takes to boil your kettle. Um, it's helping, it's taking that step back to have awareness, to just practice little things and not think, oh, I'm not getting out to my gym workout anymore, so therefore I'm going to let everything go. No, it's about, I'm not getting to my gym workout, so what can I do that's even just 5 minutes today
Hmm.
going to bring me something where I feel that I'm taking care of myself. So there's little things that you can do, that we need to do in order to make sure we're bringing the attention back to self, in service of, it's like the whole analogy of the oxygen mask, right?
Yeah.
This is where the courage comes in, because you need to be able to put on the oxygen mask before you can put on the oxygen masks of others. Um, so if we're using that analogy, putting on your own oxygen mask is what does fuel you, what does fuel your gas tank, your vitality tank, your joy tank. And they can be little things, but it's about making a list of all of those things and saying, what can I draw upon today that's going to bring me a little piece of peace?
Mm. And yeah, because I think what happens instinctively is, as the stakes rise with the level of commitment into X, then the self compassion or self love, it doesn't kind of equate, right?
Yeah.
And so, I can only imagine. Well, actually, I do. I have actually a really good friend that is a nurse, and so I know that she's exhausted. She comes home and it's like, but she doesn't have time for the self-love because she's got to get back and work the double shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because the stakes are so high, people kind of say, well, you know what, I just need to sleep, or I just need this, or I need that glass of wine, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is it safe to say that as the stakes increase, so does the need for self-love?
Oh, well, I would say so, and I'm only saying that because I would, I don't want to say I regret things or I would do it differently, but I would have done things differently, if I could have a do-over around how I would take care of myself differently
Yeah.
when stakes got high. And because you are called to work harder and work longer, and it's a finite time, you're not going to do it forever, so you do, dig in and go. And that's the time where, when you come home, even if on your way home stop off, and before you go in the house, just do a little walk around the block, or
Mm.
take the bus or you take public transit, whatever. I don't know what's going on right now, but is that you just walk, take an extra block to walk. And then sometimes it's hard. I can't do it because I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
But that extra bit of air or time just to sort of bring awareness to your own body and your own self is so important. I mean, even just going to bed, instead of like you go, like as you sort of lie in bed and as your head hits the pillow, even just practicing a gratitude, saying, you know what,
Yeah.
I did the best I could today, and I'm proud of myself. Rather than, "Ugh, I could have done more."
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's a really great distinction, that self-love can be stillness, as you said earlier, with any form of meditation. Just even taking 10 deep breaths is a form of self-love and stillness. And so, we're provided the time and the opportunity to be still and to work inward. And so, the self-growth that I've been talking about, this opportunity to up level your own game now, as a person, never mind even as a business, but as a person, is an act of self-love, and a gratitude practice is huge, huge, huge. I mean, it's a universal law, right?
Yeah,
Gratitude reciprocates, and
yeah, yeah.
it fills the cup for sure.
As long as it's genuine, like I know that people say, oh, just practice gratitude and you'll be all good. It's like, no, it's not the cure all, but it is more about the awareness, bringing the awareness to self, saying, you know what, I had a hard day today. It was tough. It was long.
Yeah,
And you know what, I'm proud of myself for what I did and how I showed up. And tomorrow's another day. And so I'm just going to like take a deep breath right now and exhale, and I'm good. And that in itself is a gratitude. So I think it's more about being really authentic and genuine with what is actually happening for you.
absolutely. You and I know this because this is what we do. It's anchored in emotion, so it has to go. It's not about an intellectual gratitude. It's really resonating, right?
Yeah.
And that's where that truth, that manifestation, that visualization becomes super powerful, is when it drops down, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So in terms of, so you coach, we're both coaches. I deal mostly with business clients, people that have businesses, solopreneurs, business owners. You have a cross section of people that you coach, and also you as a yoga instructor and practitioner. What are you seeing as some of the kind of common themes that people are either struggling with right now, needing guidance on when they are cooped up? I'd love to be able to offer some insights to the people at home that are watching this.
Oh, okay. Well, being cooped up, you mean like being on self-isolation right now.
Yeah.
So what I'm noticing right now, and where the biggest, I think, impact can be is, so right now there's a whole bunch of fear and panic and anxiety and worry and all those emotions that hijack us. And I'm not going to call them bad emotions, because emotions are all emotions are gifts. And so whenever emotion sort of comes through, you got to pay attention to it. It's like, okay, what's it telling me? What is this thing? Right now, we're having emotions that are coming that maybe are um, they're heightened, like they're heightened, and therefore they hijack us. And I mean, we all kind of are familiar with the amygdala hijack, where those primitive emotions can grip us, and if we don't get a handle on them, then they will paralyze us. So what's happening with in a lot of people, they're paralyzed by fear, they're paralyzed by anxiety, and they can't, and people are now
Mm.
forced to spend a lot of time on their own or in a house or wherever without their busy schedule, right? So they can't even calm down, and they're like, what do I do? How do I be productive? So what I'm noticing right now is really helping people with being calm, staying calm, because when you are staying calm, and I learned this actually in nursing, because it was no help to anybody. Nobody wants a nurse who's panicking.
Right.
You want a nurse who actually has it together and comes in the room and can stay calm and can move through that. You also want a nurse who can be there and be in the emotion with you. So I was a type of nurse. I was never afraid to sort of cry with my patients if that was the time, if it's appropriate. However, back to this. So I think the important thing is to maintain our sense of calm, and that is done through a daily practice of yoga and meditation, for sure. Do you have to do an hour and a half of yoga per day? Maybe not. Do you have to do a little bit of meditation? I would say that's one way to make sure that you're repatterning the brain, the neural pathways, in order to prepare you for when the emotion grips you. So for me, and what I'm helping people with is to help them have a maintaining that calm, that sense of calm, coming back to the breath, because the breath is so powerful. And every time we can have conscious breathing, you can't think of anything else, really. You have to think of the breath and think of that. So that to me is the most important practice that we can do today. And, you know, we've done this forever. I mean, when I was a nurse and, you know, taking care of kids and they would be undergoing procedures, we would have them blow bubbles, right? Because when you blow bubbles, right, you have to take an inhale and an exhale to blow the bubbles. So just little things like that we did with kids all the time, or pretend you're blowing out your birthday candles. So, you know, those aren't new practices. I think they're new practices sometimes for adults or people who haven't maybe been exposed to it. And I think meditation has always been this very foreign thing, and it's not. It's available and accessible to all of us, and there's no rubric or performance grid for it. Everybody can do a meditation.
Yeah, and do you find that there's still kind of a misconception about what maybe people think meditation is? I mean, and even yoga for that matter?
Yeah. Well, yes. And what and so I think people think meditation is you're sitting on top of a mountain, you know, in an easy pose with your hands like this and having to go through a specific thing. And that is one form. I'm not going to say, not saying it's not part of it, but I think anytime you can bring, so meditation is bringing consciousness and awareness to the breath
To the
and
breath, yeah.
now, right? And so anytime you can do that, that is a meditative practice. It's and people say, well, I run, so I'm meditating then. You might be focused when you're running, and you definitely have awareness around that. And I'm not saying running is not a good thing, but anytime you can still your mind and your body and focus on the breath, and the thoughts will come, and all the stuff comes through your mind. That's not a problem. It's actually part of the process. And the thing is, there's the thought and let it go. There's the emotion, name it, move through it. And so the breath helps you sort of do that. I mean, I hear a lot of people say, well, I can't do meditation, and I'm not good at it. Everybody can do it, and there's no rules.
Yeah, there is no guideline. Yeah, that's the thing, and I think people don't realize that there is no rules around it per se, right? There's no rubric like you were saying. So so what I'm picking up from you then is definitely having some sort of maintaining a yoga and or meditation practice daily, breath work, whatever you want to label it out there, people, right? Would be conscious breathing. There you go.
Breathing, yeah, and then maybe that takes it away from the weirdness of it. I don't know.
That's a good one though. Actually, conscious breathing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And what you're saying is actually almost every one of these shows we tie it back to this because it becomes super important, which is what we call a winning ritual, right? Or your daily routine, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Success behaviors. There needs to be something that reinstates or exemplifies a habit pattern that you want to keep going or rewire or whatever it is. But you have to set yourself up for success,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And it has to be a non-negotiable, right? And so that act of self-love is treating that winning ritual, if you will, as a non-negotiable. And you know, we talked about this. I think it was Jim Rohn said a long time ago: "Win the morning, win the day." Right? And it's that. And so what can a winning ritual look like for different people? For you, it's obviously meditation, yoga in the morning, I suspect. Actually, you usually go for a hike too. It's kind of what you're, right?
Usually I do. I think, as you know, my dog had knee surgery, and so it
Dog's
was,
out of commission.
so I've had to get, a dog sitter or and it's not that she needs dog sitting. She's just a little baby, and she's like being left by herself, and she's used to coming with me up the mountain. So definitely up, a hike somewhere, being in the forest somewhere. And right now, because I have this, big property, my forest right now is here.
Mm,
And so I'm doing, getting out and at least getting out in the forest here. And then when I can, I go up the mountain for sure. But usually a daily hike is my
yeah.
thing. Mhm.
Yeah. And, for people out there that may be listening to this that are looking to start something or want to take that first step, uh, what I would suggest, some things that we implement with clients at Leap Zone is, well, what would be a great way for you to create space that's all about you? Number one, and all the big wig coaches, all the names, if you will, in the industry swear by this, right? It's like when you wake up, it's no social media, no email, especially in this day, especially right now, social media, it's like, like this is a sacred space. So a sacred time for you, coffee, tea, I get that. Meditation, whatever that is for you, conscious breathing, perhaps it is a walk. I have clients that, 20 minutes of motivational YouTube videos or reading first thing. It's journaling. We all know the power of journaling. And so finding what works for you.
Mhm.
And then it's applying it consistent. It has to be a consistent practice.
Yeah.
And, I've seen it, gang. I mean, I'm privileged to coach business startups to multi-million dollar companies. And when they're firing on all cylinders, they're regimented, they have their daily winning ritual, it's a non negotiable. And whenever they need to kind of get back to their true north as a person, as a business owner, they
Mhm.
always go back to their winning rituals and it sets people up for success.
Always,
Um,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
100%. And, in this, and I say this, everybody, we are our own business. So
Mhm.
we are in the business of being a human being. Me, James Gardner, you, Dori Howard, right? Like I'm my own brand. And so I need to set myself up for success.
Yeah.
And it has to be treated like it. We say this, Isabel Mercier, my boss says this all the time. You have to treat yourself like $1 million client,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um, and realizing that we're up against the worry and the anxiety, as you were saying, and this kind of fear-based mindset that really is the infectious virus in a sense, if you think about it, right? This fear that's sweeping through, and one of the best things anybody can do to arm themselves is to create the space to counteract that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I often say things like, we would never think about leaving our house without brushing our teeth or washing our face. So my thing is like, get up, brush your teeth, wash your face, and shower your mind. And
I like that.
yeah.
How come I
And
never
so
heard that one from you? That's a good one.
I'm surprised because I say that a lot. Um, but no, it's like it's wash your face, brush your teeth, shower your mind, and that to me is like, yeah, like why wouldn't I do that? And there's some mornings where I don't have the amount of time to sort of spend on different things, but I do make sure I do something every morning. And what I find really helps is being in community. So I do have
Mm,
people that I meet in online in the morning. We get to our mats in our respective mats in our respective homes in the respective corners of the world, and we practice together. And that to me has been very motivating, very helpful. And so I would say to other people right now, because we are in our respective homes, is to build your community in a different way, because community is so important. We're human beings. We need to connect. We need to be together. We need to gather. And so we need to find ways now to gather in different ways. And sometimes having a meditation buddy well, not only is motivating, but energetically, it's also a great way to, I would say, elevate the consciousness what we're doing here.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about community, and it is more important now than ever. And I think we're doing a good job of, at least I see, of kind of, creating support groups and being there. And you and we're fortunate enough to do what we do on Zoom every day. And now more and more people are creating their own groups and finding out that there's different platforms to
Sure.
at least keep that connection going. However, let's talk about, and this is a good one, this is something I think, the courage to look away from friends, colleagues, people that may not be the community, that could pull you in the negative direction.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've had some people that have come to me that have asked for guidance in, like my two best friends, like I don't know how to handle what they want to talk about or what they're posting. And there's
Mm.
some courage about, understanding what you need, and it ties back into self-love, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of that's a loaded question or a loaded statement, because there's many forms of that. And so the first thing that comes to mind for me is boundaries. And, Brene Brown talks a lot about a very compassionate person is a very boundaried person. So she
Mm,
talks about that being compassionate actually is setting boundaries. It doesn't mean I don't care about you. It doesn't mean I don't want to listen to you and I won't engage with you. But there's a place where I'm going to engage and how I'm going to sort of do that, and what's healthy for me and actually what's healthy for you. So setting boundaries has been a huge thing in terms of where do I draw the line in terms of what I'm going to engage with. The second thing around compassion and boundaries, Kristen Neff talks about fierce compassion. And again, she talks about setting boundaries and saying no when you need to, so that you actually it's actually a compassionate act to say no, or to cut things off. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece of this is being able to create, uh, um, have the container or create the space or hold space for people to be able to share what they're going through, and not being afraid to lean in. So as
mm,
myself, not being afraid to lean in, not being afraid to wade through that discomfort, because it is uncomfortable when you start talking about where people are at right now, and holding space for that. So those are two different things going on. I don't know if you can get what I mean, but for example, we had a call with our family the night, and so we're doing these sort of dinner time calls. We're all having dinner, but in our respective things. It's a very common thing for us to be very comical and humorous in my family. We start off everything's, and that's great, because humor is a really good antidote
yeah,
for
yeah.
some of it. But it's also a mask, and humor can be a mask to what's really going on beneath. So the first part is humor and letting that happen. But the second thing is, and I said, okay, how is everybody really doing? Like, how are you guys actually really managing? And being okay to hear what's going to come, and not trying to fix it, not trying to provide advice, but letting people emote and letting their self come through. So my mom, she talked about how the difficulty she was having, and everyone, then people were my sister then and other people. And when you give people the space to be able to I call it brave space, to share what's going on, but not having to fix it, not coming up with a solution, just letting them process. That's a courageous and brave act, because you don't know what's going to emerge. It can be
Mm,
unknown when you create that container, and you not let people have people sort of move through what they're processing. You don't know what's going to emerge, and you just have to let it be, and let it pass through, and let it go, and let people be where they're at. So those are sort of the two edges of compassion that I've sort of found myself in this past couple of weeks, especially, is and what I need to do. What is it that I need then to be able to hold that space? So if
right.
I'm going to hold brave space for somebody and allow and let that happen, I need to be strong and healthy myself. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that concept of brave space. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really
It's, you know,
resonates.
we're moving away from, you know, hashtag happiness, right?
Yeah,
So we've been in this probably decade of just be happy. And that's not real.
that's right.
Um, because happy is one emotion, and we're beings with a whole range of emotions, and we have to move through them. And it's courageous to actually cry. It's courageous to actually say, I'm scared. It's courageous to say, I'm actually really angry and frustrated with what's going on here. And then being able to move through it. You can move through it, and it comes back to, again, a meditative practice or a meditation practice, because I can still move through my emotions but not have this kind of roller coaster going on. And I
Mm,
can move through my emotions more like this. Yeah, that's what I.
yeah, yeah. Hashtag happiness. Go. Those days are over.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, but we had to go through them to get to where we are today, where we can be more real.
Yeah, and do you think let's tie that into jumping ahead based on your intuition, Dori. What do you feel will happen as when the dust settles? How will we emerge from this in terms of maybe we are a step more towards that consciousness of being of um, we use the term heart-based in business, conscious corporations, things like that. Uh, what do you feel like will happen?
Well, what I feel, and it's probably not the popular, might not be the popular opinion, but again, it's stepping into courage. Is that you know, um, shifting and transformation comes from a place of usually from a place of suffering. So there has to be a level of something that needs to shift. So for my own journey, I actually had to get to the place of it being so bad and so not great that I needed that in order for me to go through and rise up and change and shift, right? So what I think what's happening now, and while yes, there's going to be a lot of people there'll be a lot of people, there are a lot of people dying, there's going to be a lot of deaths happening, there's going to be a lot of suffering in the world. And it's almost like we have a collective suffering. We've got a global suffering happening right now. And I'm hopeful that from this level of global suffering will be a global raising of global consciousness, which has to happen because we weren't paying attention to what was going on in our world. We weren't paying attention to the fact that we were ruining this planet. We were destroying the planet
Mhm.
as a human race. And so even though we were all making little tiny bits and pieces of change here and there, it's almost like we've needed something to catapult us
Mhm.
into a different shift. And so this is the gift of this virus. And I'm not downplaying how hard it is right now for a lot of people. But there are some people in this world who have a different message around it. And Bill Gates is one. If you ever listen to Bill Gates, he'll say a very similar thing.
Mhm.
um, that it takes something like this to shift the consciousness of humankind to the next level. And I feel that this is going to elevate people to the next level of consciousness in some greater way.
I agree, and that's kind of why I wanted to put this series together of conversations, because it starts with the person that's watching this on the other end,
Mm-hmm.
and tying it back to the individual. And so, yes, we have a duty and a responsibility as a human race, and I feel strongly that each of us has a responsibility to emerge from this an elevated version of ourselves. And I yeah, and so to that end, now is the time to take the gift of time and look inward and reconnect inward. And I keep looking over here because I have all my books over there, so I'm like, yeah. And like just the other night I just went through and I just picked out a random book and just opened it up and just read a few pages, like
Yeah.
reconnect and just kind of stimulate and keep
Mm-hmm.
growing. It's the time so that when we emerge, we all emerge, as you said, a different elevation of consciousness, an elevated level of
Yeah.
consciousness,
Yeah. And
and
yeah.
see it even in the business sector. Most of the businesses that we coach are somewhat heart-based. Definitely that's what we do at Leap Zone Strategies for sure. And by design, we attract what we are vibrationally. And I think that has been evolving in of itself
Mhm.
in the corporate sector, right? There is more of that coming through now, and I would love to see even more of this happening, because I do feel that as a whole we are shifting that way. As humans, what we really want to gravitate to, what motivates us, what inspires us, and it is definitely on that paradigm shift, in my opinion. And I feel like we come out of this, and it's gonna be the catalyst to really push us towards that direction. That's my hope. I know hope is not a strategy, as we say in business coaching. However, I trust that it will be that.
Well, I think there's a lot of good that's going to come of this. And one thing is that we've all realized that we are all connected
Yeah.
on a very basic level. We're all connected in some way, shape, or form. And this has you don't, you just have to go, I mean, to the grocery store 6 feet away, and without even talking to anybody, we all know what's going on. Like, we all have this collective understanding about what we're
Yeah.
doing, and what we're about. And some of that will carry through, I believe. But I think a lot of people will have a different level, and that in itself is awareness. So people are, if nothing else, people have become so aware right now, and that's the first step of any change, is awareness, right? And
That's it.
so,
That's it
yeah,
right there. That's it.
yeah. So I mean, people are washing their hands like they never have before, because they're aware of something, that there's a new awareness there. And so that's the first step to shifting. Um, and I've been around a lot of death and dying in my career. It's not something that I'm scared of. It's not something that I fear. I don't fear any of that. Um,
Hmm.
and I think we as a human race, at least in our culture, I don't think it's global, but in our culture, where there's a lot of fear around death, a lot of fear around dying, and it's part of life. And all the kids I've taken care of who have passed away, it's like been almost like an acceptance of, this is what's going to happen. And so it's a very humbling experience to be around somebody who is passing. And that there's, for me, this is my belief, is that there's definitely a greater force there that's at play. And I think we have to let go of trying to control all these outcomes and control everything. Surrender to what is. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean hanging the white flag. It just means, what, this is where we're at, and where can I have influence? How do I have, what can I do to do my part? So yeah, I think there's going to be a big shift. I mean, I'm hoping there will be.
No, it
I'm
will be.
not
There will
putting
be.
hopes on the strategy, but I don't know. I
And you
hope.
nailed it. You brought it back to the first step always is awareness, and then I truly believe the next thing that is needed is the courage to take the first step, whatever
Yeah.
awareness that is, right? So for you at home, personal growth, self growth, relationships, whatever it is that needs to be elevated, you become aware of it, and then the first step is the courage to to take that step
Yeah.
in that direction, right? And so I think that's a great way to kind of tie it all in. That this is the time, right? This is the time where we are aware on the macro level of the human condition, and I think we're also aware individually
Mm.
of the situation and the landscape. And each of us has a courage inside that we can draw upon to add to that elevated consciousness, which will be the outcome of this when the dust finally settles. So,
Mhm.
uh, Dori, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me here on this conversation. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those of you that are interested in Dori Howard and the company, we will of course have some show notes, and we'll put links to her website and all those things, her retreat, her coaching, and where you can find Dori. So, and once Salt Spring is ready to go, we'll have those retreats up and running, and get that going so that we can really impact people on a profound level. So, Dori, you have an amazing rest of the day. Enjoy your time. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay courageous. And mad love to the courageous out there and each and every one of you. So, all right.
Thanks.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Jim. All
All right.
right. Bye.
Bye.